setting the stage and SSEAC's commitment to addressing grand challenges in Southeast Asia. So we promised that today was going to be a day of inspiration and impact. So to kickstart the inspiration part of the morning, I'd like to call to the stage our very distinguished panel of keynotes for today. So the first one I'd like to call to the stage is Bill Costello. Let's please give Bill a big hand. Welcome. Thank you, Bill. So Bill is Australia's Assistant Secretary for Southeast Asia Development and Programs at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. With over 2 decades of diplomatic experience, he leads Australia's engagement with the region, including trade, investment, and development programs that advance sustainable and inclusive growth. Thanks very much for being with us today, Bill. Bill, who's going to give us an idea of the changing Southeast Asian context and what it means for Australia. Bill.
Okay, well, thank you, Sandra, and thanks, Greg, for the warm welcome. I'm glad to be here with you all today. I'll start with just some statements of Australian policy, which are that Australia's security, prosperity, and economic future are intrinsically linked to Southeast Asia. Our connections go beyond geography, with enduring ties across family, business, education, tourism, and more. Our nations and peoples all benefit from the peace, stability, and security we build together with our partners in Southeast Asia. We all benefit as each of us succeeds and thrives. And Australia believes we have a responsibility to contribute to a more equitable future for our region. As Minister for Foreign Affairs Penny Wong stated clearly in her keynote speech in Kuala Lumpur on 10 July this year, that's that one, and a speech I commend to you. If you're looking for a comprehensive articulation of Australia's approach to Southeast Asia and strategic challenges and opportunities Australia sees in the region. She noted that at a time of global disruption, Australia is unwavering in our support for Southeast Asia's growth and prosperity. We're prioritising our region, our relationships, and the rules-based order that protects us. We remain a reliable and steadfast partner to the region in times of uncertainty, and we're directing our $1.28 billion development program in Southeast Asia to meet highest needs. And we continue to work with Southeast Asia to shape a region where ASEAN and ASEAN-led institutions hold the centre and all voices are heard. Before I continue, I want to provide a few reminders about the nature of the region. Nothing you will not have heard before, but just perhaps the salient points that frame my presentation. The 11 countries of Southeast Asia have some things in common and many differences. They share geography, and now that Timor-Leste joined in October, all are members of ASEAN. They all either have developed their economies or plan to develop through export-led growth strategies. So the US tariffs and consequent disruption to the global trading environment will be difficult for them. In foreign policy, they're all involved in the great game of managing relations with both China and the US. Although they exist along a spectrum, they all want to keep their options open and they don't want to choose sides. They're all keen to diversify their external relationships, including with Australia. But it's also worth remembering how diverse they are. In size, Indonesia has a population of 280 million people. Brunei has 500,000. In wealth, Singapore has a per capita GDP of $90,000 US. Myanmar and Timor-Leste around $1,300 US per capita. In stability, Singapore is ultra stable politically. Myanmar is a conflict zone. 26 years ago in Timor-Leste, much of the capital, Dili, was a smouldering ruin. Myanmar and Timor-Leste receive substantial international development assistance. I'll call it aid today. Singapore and Brunei are not aid eligible, and Malaysia will likely soon attain high income status and join them in being not eligible to receive official development assistance, and so on. Now, I mentioned some impacts recently on the region. I just want to say that we continue to analyse the impact on the region of global developments, including Trump administration policies, including on trade and development cooperation, and what it means for Southeast Asia. And I want to let you know that Australia has emphasised to the US the importance of Southeast Asia and the US's economic and security interests in the region. And in our engagements with the administration, the US has been clear on the importance of the peace, stability and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific. And I will say that it was pleasing to see engagement in the region recently by President Trump and senior members of his administration. Notwithstanding global headwinds, Southeast Asia and Australia share strong economic growth prospects. By 2040, Southeast Asia collectively is expected to be the world's fourth largest economy. Its middle class is already close to 200 million people, which constitutes a consumer market 10 times bigger than Australia's. 55% of its people are under the age of 35, representing a large opportunity for growth and for Australian education providers to attract this useful demographic. And our continued engagement leverages geographic proximity and will further build strong people-to-people links and economic complementarity. Now, if I turn to Australia's policy settings for our engagement with Southeast Asia, and specifically with a focus on development for the region, I point to two high-level framing documents and a series of plans. Now, Greg's already referred to Invested, Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040, and the fact that you had Nicholas Moore here last year to talk about that. And it's a central focus for the Australian government's engagement as a nation with the region. Its focus is what it says on the tin, to lift two-way investment levels, but specifically Australian investment into Southeast Asia, which has been stagnant while those economies have grown. And I should say too that in Prime Minister's early engagement with the leaders of the region, this is what they asked for. They want more Australian investment and they want more choices of foreign investors into their countries. There's a cross-agency integrated effort across many sectors involving finance to be deployed by Export Finance Australia, deal teams and business champions working country by country, managed by my department, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. There's a Southeast Asia Business Exchange we've established, which is helping us to deliver the invested strategy, and it's delivered a high tempo of business and investment missions. Three of the areas of focus for those investment missions have been transnational education and skills, net zero and green economy skills. In the past 18 months, we've conducted business missions to the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand and Cambodia, and more is scheduled for 2026. The ASEAN Australia Centre was established last year, and its job is to strengthen business, education and creative industry connections between our country and the region. And we are seeking to build opportunity and prosperity as a government through the invested strategy with a focus in green energy, agriculture and food, education and beyond. Maps quite well with your priorities, Greg. And we're also contributing to the skills and education uplift that will be required for the industries of the future in Australia and in Southeast Asia. Australia's international education plays a key role in delivering the government's invested strategy. Education has been integral to building people-to-people links, institutional relationships and economic prosperity. Our universities are well placed to meet the demand from the region for high quality education. And just a reminder that over the past 20 years, some 700,000 students from Southeast Asia have benefited from a world-class education in Australia. We're pleased to see Australian universities, including the University of Sydney, delivering on the invested strategy ambition, and we want to see more transnational education. There are a couple of other examples, Deakin, Lancaster and Western Sydney University campuses. In security. It's serving as a hub for specialised education in ocean law, maritime security, and maritime resource engagement across the region. There are now 14 institutions from Australia with campuses in the region. Next, I'll turn to the Australian Government's development policy released in 2023. It provides a framework for our aid program. Now, on the understanding of what to get measured counts, it sets targets for efficiency and effectiveness of our aid investments at 80%, which we are achieving at the moment, pleased to say. For gender equality, 80% of our development activities must address gender equality effectively. It encourages us to increase our investment in disability inclusion. And on climate investment, it set an initial target that by last year, at least half of all new bilateral and regional investments valued at more than $3 million will have a climate change objective, with a goal of reaching 80% of our new investments having a climate objective by 28-29. And not published yet, but I can tell you we achieved our 24-25 objective in Southeast Asia. We also have published as a government international gender equality and international disability equality and rights strategies, which flesh out the plans to achieve those targets set by our development policy. On Southeast Asia, the development policy says we will work with our Southeast Asian partners to sustain and protect hard-won development gains, including by jointly investing in reforms. Economic productivity and investment in decent jobs, in innovation and a clean energy transition are critical to the region's future. Just some numbers on what we do in terms of our development assistance flows to Southeast Asia. The budget forecasts $1.28 billion in this current financial year, 25-26. And of that total, we estimate $676 million to be delivered through our bilateral programs, run largely from our embassies and high commissions in those countries. Within that amount, Indonesia is the largest bilateral program by far, at $319 million this financial year. A further $167 million this year will be delivered through regional, which largely means ASEAN, sub-regional, by which I mean Mekong, or multi-country programs in the region. And the remainder, $437 million, represents flows to the region from global programs. Examples include our contributions to the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and global health funds and programs. Now, the delivery of Australian development assistance in 7 countries in the region is driven by development partnership plans, against which we also measure progress. Those are negotiated with those countries after consultation with civil society and other stakeholders. There's also a Southeast Asia regional development partnership plan. All of the DPPs have been put in place over the past couple of years and are available on the DFAT website. They set out high-level objectives, priority sectors and themes, and how we'll deliver our program. And as I mentioned, they're agreed with partner governments. The plans usually run for 5 years, but they don't need to be static. Changing circumstances can and possibly should result in changes to priorities and our approach. The new priorities of the Prabowo administration in Indonesia is an example of where this might happen. Now, while I'm talking about change, we have done some adjusting to respond to the immediate problems arising as a result of global aid cuts. But in the scheme of things, we haven't changed a lot. Last financial year, 2024-25, we redirected about $28 million of our spend to meet immediate gaps in areas where we are working, mostly in the health field, governance, civil society, and so forth. And the government announced in its budget for this year, $81 million over 3 years for regional health resilience across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. We're providing 20 million of that amount this year in Southeast Asia. More broadly though, for the moment, our response through the aid program in Southeast Asia to the turmoil and disruption of recent months, the aid cuts, the tariffs increases, etc., has been to double down on what we're doing and to make clear that we are a reliable, responsive but steadfast partner. Just want to talk a little bit about international education, since we're an education institution. we're increasing the government's support to international education in Southeast Asia. The Department of Education is producing a transnational education roadmap for Southeast Asia, which aims to deepen understanding of local cultural, policy and regulatory contexts and identify market opportunities for various models of transnational education. Department of Education's support to the ASEAN Research Collaboration Project will support 75 to 100 high-performing early career researchers from ASEAN countries. And there's also a whole of Australian government engagement to shore up Australia's position as a global skills provider of choice amid fierce competition globally, specifically in areas of high demand for Australia and for the region. And as an example, in the skills end of the spectrum, we're supporting commercially sustainable activities such as brokering an agreement to upskill Indonesian students at an aged care facility in Jakarta with an accredited Australian aged care qualification. Australian government scholarships continue to foster Southeast Asian leadership. Last year, more than 2,600 future leaders from Southeast Asia came to Australia on DFAT funded scholarships, the majority short-term, but also around 600 plus long-term scholarships. And also I remind you that 1,700 Australians travel to the region for an outbound scholarship, fellowship, short course or mobility program, largely through the government's new Colombo plan. Engagement with Southeast Asia is a priority under the new Colombo plan. There's been a phase 2 set of reforms announced by the Foreign Minister in July, which aim to further strengthen Australia's Indo-Pacific capability and Asia literacy. We were pleased to see healthy application numbers for the 2026 round of the program, which opened for applications in August and closed in September, from Australian universities and undergraduate students. The round, which is operationalising the phase 2 reforms, is currently under assessment with outcomes to be announced by December. We're encouraged to see in the 2026 applications good take-up by Australian universities of changes which allow the NCP programs to be undertaken at Australian offshore campuses in the Indo-Pacific region, and that 9 new consortia arrangements were developed by universities to collaborate and deliver new Colombo Plan student experiences in the region. Well, thanks to Universities Australia, DFAT and Australian universities worked together in 2024 to implement an innovative co-financing partnership that provided master's scholarships for 132 ASEAN emerging leaders. That was an announcement at the March 2024 ASEAN Australia Summit held in Melbourne. The contribution from universities was critical for expanding the reach of the program from the initial 75 scholarships supported by government to that number of 132. Feedback from the region was that co-funding between the government and universities was particularly well received as a sign that the Australian education sector values Southeast Asian students. And Greg mentioned the priority that the government is putting on Southeast Asia for international student intakes. And DFAT is keen to explore further government-university partnerships based on some of those initial lessons learned from the Oz for ASEAN pilot. Recently, DFAT has increased our commitment to scholarships in Southeast Asia. We've put aside $10 million per year to deepen our networks and relationships across Southeast Asia, including we're using some non-ODA funding, some new non-ODA funding to support Australia Award scholarships for students from Brunei, Singapore and Malaysia. We're investing more funding in alumni engagement in the countries of the region, and we're also planning opportunities to connect privately funded students in Australia with Australian government resources. So we welcome opportunities to work with the university sector to find innovative ways to expand the scope and reach of scholarship and alumni programs. Yeah. I'm getting the hurry up, so I'll skip through this quickly, but I did want to mention, this is examples of our engagement across Southeast Asia. 3 programs run in my branch, which are multi-country engagement by Australia in the region. and which engage Commonwealth and state government agencies as key delivery partners. The Partnerships for Infrastructure program, which in 2026 will move into phase 2, seeks to help partner governments reform the policies, regulations and systems which improve the quality of infrastructure. We're looking to progress quality projects to financing and implementation and to deepen relationships, including government-to-government relationships. Key P4I focus areas are energy transition, sustainable transport and telecommunications. Second, the Southeast Asia and Australia Government-to-Government Partnerships Program, which we call G2G, relatively new program established a year ago, essentially aims to help meet the supply and demand for engagement between Australian government agencies and their counterparts in the region. It's got 4 priority themes to which 75% of the resources and a set of core partnerships over multiple years will be dedicated. Climate change and the energy transition, education and skills, sustainable agriculture and food security, and effective and inclusive public institutions. As mentioned, the program is now almost a year old. It's evolving and maturing in good ways, we think, and we anticipate it being a key tool in our toolbox for Australia engaging Southeast Asia. Investing in women is another flagship gender, which I'm about for me in a moment. So, in conclusion, as Foreign Minister Wong said in her speech in Kuala Lumpur in July, the message today is clear. Australia is in Southeast Asia for the long haul. We remain committed to working collaboratively with all arms of the Australian ecosystem, governments, private sector, universities, to navigate the challenges there, including through our posts, our embassies and high commissions in the region, and by identifying pathways for additional opportunities for engagement. Thank you.